All right, welcome everybody. I have the very difficult but pleasurable task of introducing Steve Wynn this morning. I say it's difficult because Steve, I know it's trite to say it, but is one of those individuals, they're rare, that truly requires no introduction. And if you've frankly walked the earth or breathed the air or even watched 60 Minutes in the last couple of weeks, you undoubtedly know a little bit about Steve Wynn. You probably are pretty familiar with what he's accomplished, and if nothing else, I hope you're familiar with the flair that he's brought to everything that he's done, and the sense for the dramatic, etc. Let me take a couple of minutes and try to give a little walk through some of Steve's accomplishments before we bring him to the lectern. Let me start off by saying, in the words of U.S. Senator Harry Reid, Steve has done more for Nevada than any other business leader in history. He turns his dreams into works of art. Las Vegas is his canvas. Steve has been widely credited with transforming Las Vegas into a world-renowned resort and convention destination. He began his storied career in the gaming business over 40 years ago as slot and assistant credit manager of the Frontier Hotel. Within a few years, Steve began to set a new standard for Las Vegas when he bought and transformed the Golden Nugget Casino into a complete hotel resort. By 1978, Steve parlayed his Golden Nugget profits and brought them to Atlantic City, where he built and eventually sold at a very large profit, perhaps the most elegant and successful casino that market had ever seen. He then turned his creativity to the Las Vegas Strip, where he conceived and what would eventually become his company's flagship property, the Mirage. Eventually, the Mirage would have two neighbors, Treasure Island and then Bellagio. Bellagio, I think to this day, is still considered one of the world's most spectacular hotels. After building another casino on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, the story really got interesting. Steve sold the company Mirage Resorts to MGM for $6.6 billion and purchased the Desert Inn with his share of the proceeds. As if what he had already done wasn't enough, Steve closed the Desert Inn and began developing what is now Wynn Las Vegas, the standard bearer for luxury resorts in Las Vegas and possibly the world. And he also opened his flagship casino in Macau, China. Most recently, Steve completed Encore, which is the new signature resort in the Wynn collection. Hopefully you knew a lot of that. The part of the story that maybe you don't know as much about is more recently how Steve has handled through this crisis. This is the part that I got a front row seat for and have learned a lot along the way. Steve's development genius has been his remarkable ability to successfully navigate in the current turbulent economy. In the words of a leading financial analyst, let me quote this directly, "Despite the recent market volatility and signs of continued deterioration in Las Vegas fundamentals, Wynn's ability to consistently deliver a superior product without compromising the customer experience has given the company a significant competitive advantage against its peers in Las Vegas. Most importantly, the company's capital structure has been managed extremely well. You may all be familiar with a recent New York Times op-ed piece by our esteemed host, Mike Milken. Mike notes, I'm paraphrasing here, I can never quote Mike exactly, the capital structure management is an essential job of corporate leaders. Optimal capital structure evolves constantly and is vitally important to a company's success. Steve's company has always had a fiscally responsible approach, and his business has always been managed prudently, and that applies to his business generally and the products and projects that he's developed. This has been, though, to Mike's point, complemented through a combination of a historically conservative and low-cost debt stack, plus recent moves to improve the company's financial position through timely stock sales and bank amendments. As a result, Wynn has emerged as perhaps the most financially sound and dominant player in the gaming industry today. With all that, it is my pleasure to introduce to you my friend, the incomparable Steve Wynn.
Mark Twain said that no speaker has ever been seriously damaged by his own introduction. Thank you, Rich. While I was putting on my uniform this morning, blue suit, red tie, for the conference, I was thinking about the fact that the conference starts at 8 o'clock this morning with this presentation by me. And I thought it was a little ironic that Mike would put me on so early. I think maybe he's trying me out. If I do good, I get to move up to lunch. 8 o'clock in the morning for Las Vegas seems a little early. So you guys are all here, ladies and gentlemen, and at the conference, and in particular this morning, thinking that I'm going to say something intelligent. Good luck. This is a funny time that we're living in. The conference schedule says Las Vegas yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I see. All right. Well, look, I think what we all want to know is, most of you in this room are very familiar with Las Vegas. You know all about it. You've spent time there. I would say it'd be rather unusual if there are 5% of the people in this room that haven't been to Las Vegas on multiple occasions and have experienced the various hotels and probably know a lot about the companies and have followed in the newspapers some of the information about the effect of the economy on Las Vegas, which has been, of course, very pejorative. I mean, the consumer spending has been radically abbreviated. People who lost their jobs and whose businesses are in serious trouble don't have money for leisure and optional expenses, and people with money are careful, as they should be in a time like this. So a business like mine that caters to high-end, an elite kind of customer with that mobile 5-star kind of service has been adversely affected, and revenues are off by 20% or more. Okay, not news to anybody. And really, that probably is the kind of thing that many of you are experiencing in your own businesses, especially if you've got anything to do with consumer spending or the financial market. If you're in my position, very much like many of the executives in this room, the question is, how long is it going to last? And if such a obvious question is hard to answer, where can we look for answers? That, I think, is where I want to go now. So, I have to say this. Any understanding of the present and the likelihood of events taking one form or another in the future is based upon a clear understanding of the past. History tells us, in most cases, gives us the clues that give us really serious guidance. In my business in Las Vegas, it has been axiomatic that the people who write about our business are young, invariably inexperienced, and have no sense of history whatsoever. Going way back to a 29 or 35-year-old analyst means 2000. And I find it tedious. I get impatient, because I'm getting older, about that kind of ignorance. So let's take a quick look back at good old Glitter Gulch, how it got started for a minute, and what does it tell us about the future. Las Vegas, starting with Bugsy Siegel. They always start with Bugsy Siegel. Bugsy Siegel actually opened the Flamingo on Christmas Eve in 1947. The Golden Nugget opened up on Labor Day before the Flamingo. Bugsy Siegel closed the Flamingo 3 days later because there were no customers. He was a little early in the arc of the city. And his partners, as you may have noticed with the Warren Beatty's movie, were very unforgiving and impatient, so they shot him. When you think about it, that's not a bad way to handle things. Anyway, okay. I may have taken us down the wrong street there. The Golden Nugget was before the Flamingo and never had a losing day, a losing year. right up to and including tonight, this morning. During those years, these past 50-odd years, Las Vegas has been as simple a story as you can imagine, unabashedly, without excuse or apology, not really about good taste or beauty, but brazenly the party that goes on. 24/7, you go to Las Vegas and you can exhaust yourself chasing around, gambling, seeing shows, going to restaurants and all that. Sure enough, over the years, the offer, the invitation to Las Vegas has expanded with time. Everything in the world got more sophisticated. All of us demand much more. I mean, I know Steven Spielberg, who's a friend of mine, says that a movie that would have drawn a wow 15 or 20 years ago can't draw a yawn today. So everybody's expectations have risen. The world has become more sophisticated as it has shrunk. And so Las Vegas, decade in and decade out, has amended its invitation and continued to be a place that, if nothing else, A, was the party town of the world, and B, kept the promise of that. That's a really good thing, to keep the promise. And if there's anything most positive you can say about Las Vegas, is that it has kept the promise. Maybe it wasn't the most ambitious and lofty promise in the world, mainly, come on, we'll see that you have fun, but it's kept that promise. And I think for that reason, it's one of the main things that has contributed to its endurance.